So the Supreme Court's emergency order, which created a significant battle between Texas and the Biden administration, is now getting even more interesting. There has now been a new decision about the state of Texas and their right to protect their border and essentially prevent the federal government from cutting border wire. So let's talk about what just happened. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we need to talk about a new huge decision that just came out, and it upholds the state of Texas's right to essentially refuse the federal government's access to certain areas along the Texas border. This decision also blocks the federal government and the Border Patrol from cutting concertina wire along those specific areas. This is an issue that the Supreme Court recently got involved in, and it got involved on an emergency basis. After that Supreme Court decision, the Biden administration tried to take the opportunity that was opened up by the Supreme Court to essentially have the Fifth Circuit rule in their favor and throw the entire case out. However, we just received a final decision from the Fifth Circuit, and in the decision, the Fifth Circuit actually blocked the federal government from entering those specific areas in the Texas, land, those specific properties, and then also they blocked the federal government and the Border Patrol from cutting all of that sea wire. This is a huge win, not just for the state of Texas and their right to defend their border and their right to self-defense, but other states as well that want to engage in similar activities. Now, before we break down what happened in this ruling, I just wanted to mention that if you guys want to support the channel even further, you can actually use the links down below in the details section in the pinned comment. There's a link over to Twitter and X where I'm going to be posting some Black Friday deals and things like that. And then also, there's going to be a link down below to the podcast that I'm doing, the Liberty Lounge podcast. You can watch it over on YouTube. We have a whole separate channel. And then also the links down below will be to the audio side. So I would love your guys' support. But again, thank you guys for your support. Now, this case specifically involves a recent Supreme Court 5-4 order overruling a temporary preliminary injunction that was granted by a Fifth Circuit 3-judge panel. The Fifth Circuit panel's decision prevented the United States Border Patrol from cutting, destroying, or otherwise interfering with sea wire that the state of Texas had put along 29 miles of municipal and private land in the Eagle Pass area. In this case, Texas originally sued the federal government in a Texas federal district court alleging trespass and violations of the Administrative Procedures Act, also known as the APA. Originally, in the lower court case, Texas obtained a temporary restraining order which barred the federal government from interfering with the state of Texas and the sea wire that they had put up, except for medical emergencies. Texas then later sought a preliminary injunction from the court, but it was denied by the court. What was interesting about that is that the lower court, in their denial, agreed with a lot of the facts that Texas had put forward. The court rejected the notion that medical emergencies would justify the destruction of the fence, and cutting the wire for one emergency would not justify leaving it open for thousands of other individuals to go through. So they, did not agree with the federal government. But despite all of that, the judge still denied the state of Texas' request for the preliminary injunction. Texas then quickly appealed to the Fifth Circuit, and along with that appeal, they requested an emergency temporary injunction. Essentially, Texas appealed the lower court's ruling to the Fifth Circuit, and then at the same time asked for the Fifth Circuit to grant an administrative injunction that would simply maintain the status quo while the appeal was taking place. The Fifth Circuit ultimately did grant that temporary, emergency administrative relief. But in response to that, of course, the Biden administration did not like that. The federal government did not like that. So they went to the United States Supreme Court on an emergency basis. And on review, the Supreme Court issued a 5-4 order, which granted the federal government's request to vacate that administrative relief. So that means that ultimately the Supreme Court voted in favor of removing the administrative relief that the Fifth Circuit had put in place. Essentially, in a backdoor way, the Supreme Court removed the block on the Border Patrol, which was preventing the Border Patrol from cutting wire in those areas. And the two Supreme Court justices that jumped in line were Justice Barrett and then also Chief Justice Roberts. Now, in reaction to that Supreme Court order, Governor Greg Abbott in Texas issued a letter to the Biden administration stating that the federal government and the Biden administration have failed to enforce federal laws that would protect the state of Texas. Therefore, under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, the state of Texas has the right of self-defense, which they're going to engage in on their own. So after that Supreme Court order, a lot of things were, up in the air. The state of Texas was saying that they were still going to engage in their own self-defense. The Supreme Court had said that no, the state of Texas was blocked from doing this. And ultimately, this went back in the hands of the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit responded by then first sending the case back down to the lower court to develop new information and evidence on this issue. The Fifth Circuit sent the case back down for only 60 days, and the Fifth Circuit just issued their final decision on this case. In the decision, the Fifth Circuit is blocking the federal government from entering and cutting wire along the Texas border. So this is a huge win for the state of Texas. In the decision, the court states that we now rule that Texas is entitled to a preliminary injunction. Specifically, the United States clearly waived sovereign immunity as to Texas state laws claims under Section 702 of the APA. That conclusion is supported by a flood of uncontradicted circuit precedent to which the United States has no answer. We also reject the United States' alternate arguments. The injunction is not barred by intergovernmental immunity because Texas is seeking not to regulate Border Patrol, but only to safeguard its own property. Nor for similar reasons is the injunction barred by the Immigration and Nationality Act. Finally, Texas has satisfied the injunction factors. Most importantly, the United States does not even contest that Texas has shown it will likely succeed on its state law trespass claims. Accordingly, we reverse the district court's judgment and grant Texas' request for a preliminary injunction. Based on the district court's supplemental fact findings concerning intervening events in Shelby Park, however, we modify the preliminary injunction as follows. Defendants are enjoined from damaging, destroying, or otherwise interfering with Texas C-wire fence in the vicinity of Eagle Pass, Texas, as indicated in the Texas complaint, in instances where defendants have necessary access to both sides of the Texas C-wire for immigration, law enforcement, and emergency purposes. That access must include the land side of the C-wire fence alongside the international border within Shelby Park. The Fifth Circuit in this ruling found that the state of Texas is not trying to regulate federal border patrol, through their actions. Instead, Texas as a state is simply trying to protect its own property, which it has a right to do. The areas that the federal government wants to enter and potentially wants to destroy is in fact Texas property. The Fifth Circuit found that the federal government is blocked from doing that. There was also a very interesting argument that was brought up by the Biden administration and the Border Patrol in regards to the fact that this Texas law and policy would impact international relationships between the United States and the nation of Mexico. However, the Fifth Circuit rejected all of those arguments, and they said that just because Mexico might not like this policy does not mean a court like the Fifth Circuit should just simply override all state laws and the state's sovereignty and their right to self-defense. The Fifth Circuit stated that similarly, defendants have not shown how removing Texas's wire would ease international relations when they themselves continue to use C-wire. True, both of Mexico's complaints reference C-wire, but they suggest the main problem is C-wire inside the floodplain. That is not at issue. The C-wire here is on top of the riverbank, not in the floodplain. More importantly, concerns about international relations do not erase property owners' rights over thousands of square miles along the border. Our precedents, old and new, make clear that concerns of national security and foreign relations do not warrant abdication of judicial role, and foreign policy below the binding level of a treaty or legislation cannot displace state laws. So the state of Texas has won a significant legal battle against the horrible Biden administration immigration policies and the attempts to enter certain areas in the state of Texas along the border, cut wire, leave it open, and allow thousands of individuals to flood through those areas. We will now see how the federal government and the Biden administration wants to respond in the next couple months while they still are kind of in place. They have the option to seek en banc panel review in the Fifth Circuit, or if they wanted, they could go immediately back to the Supreme Court and seek Supreme Court intervention also on an emergency basis. What would be interesting in my mind is if they decide to bypass the Fifth Circuit, and I do think that they're going to do that. They're going to bypass the en banc panel in the Fifth Circuit to try and get a fast response from the Supreme Court, before the Trump administration takes control. And also, they are probably going to take that opportunity because the Supreme Court has already ruled in their favor once before. And so they're hoping that the Supreme Court will do the same here. So we're going to see how this plays out, but a huge win for the state of Texas and their right to self-defense in this whole border issue. If anything else develops, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to check the details section where I have the link over to my Twitter account, the X account, and then also the podcast. I would love your guys' support over on those other platforms. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget, this station was built by Armed Scholars, and the station will be maintained by Armed Scholars.